Northern China. You're standing in a village square, the sun pressing down on the back of your neck, heat sinking into your skin while dust dries your throat with every breath. No one explains anything. No one needs to. A man you've never seen before steps forward, lifts your chin toward the light like he's checking something fragile, something he might own. His thumb drags across your jaw. He studies your face. Then your mouth is forced open. He counts your teeth slowly, carefully, the way a farmer inspects a horse before deciding if it's worth the price. Your hands are pulled forward, fingers spread. He presses them, bends them, turns your palms over, tracing the lines as if your future is already written there. Not yours, his. He says a number. That's all it takes. Behind you, your mother collapses. A sound that doesn't even sound human. Your father doesn't move, doesn't look at you. He just lifts his hand. Coins fall into his palm, one after another, louder than they should be. And in that moment, without warning, without permission, something disappears. You don't belong here anymore. You don't belong to them. You don't even belong to yourself. You try to understand what's happening, but there's nothing to understand. Your mother is screaming your name like she's trying to pull you back into existence. Your father is staring at the ground like if he looks up, everything will break. The man grabs your wrist and pulls. You stumble forward. You look back once, just once. Your mother reaches for you. Someone holds her back. And that's it. That's the last time you will ever see this place. The last time anyone will say your real name out loud. And the worst part? Everyone accepted it. This wasn't rare. This wasn't an accident. For over 2,000 years, inside the imperial courts of China, young men like you were bought, renamed, reshaped, and erased, turned into something else entirely. Not people, not sons, not even memories. Just something the world erased, like it never existed. The system didn't begin with power. It began with hunger, not the kind you ignore, the kind that empties everything. The Han dynasty ruled for centuries, and during those centuries, the land failed again and again. The Yellow River flooded without warning. Monsoons never came. Crops didn't grow. They died where they stood. And when everything was gone, grain, animals, tools, anything that could be traded, families were left with one thing they could still give up. Not because they wanted to, because there was nothing else left. That's when they appeared. They moved through the poorest regions like they had always been part of it. Quiet, unhurried, certain. They had a name, Rena, human teeth. Not metaphor, not exaggeration. Human teeth. Men trained to look at a person and decide what they were worth. They didn't rush. They never had to. They stopped where they saw it. A face that held symmetry. Skin untouched by labor. Eyes that still carried clarity. They stepped closer, lifted the chin, turned the head toward the light. No words. No explanation. Then the inspection began. Mouth opened. Teeth counted. Fingers examined one by one. Pressed. Bent. Turned. They looked for hands that could learn instruments. Voices that could hold tone. Bodies that could be corrected into something refined. But appearance wasn't enough. It was never enough. They watched how quickly you understood, how quietly you listened, how easily you adjusted. No one asked what you wanted. Not labor, presence. Something that could exist beside power without disturbing it. Something that could be shaped, polished, perfected, until it no longer resembled where it came from. That was the point. Not to use you, to remake you. And once they saw it, once they recognized that potential, they didn't hesitate. There was no second look, no reconsideration. A number was spoken, a decision was made. And from that moment on, your life stopped belonging to you. The first thing they took was your name. Not slowly, not over time. Immediately. You walked in carrying everything that proved you existed, your name, your voice, the way people used to call you, and within hours, it was gone. Replaced with something polished, something expensive, something that sounded like it belonged to someone else. Precious jade, autumn moon, morning frost. Not names, labels. Easier to sell that way. Your hair was cut. Your clothes were changed. Silk replaced everything you used to wear. Soft, clean, controlled. You looked better than you ever had. That was the point. Then, the training began. It didn't look cruel at first. That's what made it effective. You were taught to read, to write, to memorize poetry, until the words stopped feeling like language and started feeling like reflex. You practiced calligraphy until every stroke was identical. Music, dance, conversation, poster, silence. Every detail corrected, every mistake noticed. You were being shaped into something precise. But underneath it, something else was happening. Every time you hesitated, it was corrected. Every time you spoke out of turn, it was corrected. Every time you remembered where you came from, it was corrected. Not violently, not loudly, just consistently. Until the correction became automatic. Until you stopped needing to be told. Homesickness didn't disappear. It was removed. Independence didn't fade. It was treated as a flaw. And slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, the idea of who you used to be stopped making sense. That life became distant, then irrelevant, then impossible. This wasn't education. It was replacement. They weren't teaching you how to behave. They were teaching you how to stop being yourself. Thought by thought, habit by habit, memory by memory. Until there was nothing left to return to, and that was the goal. Not obedience. Belief. What waited for you on the other side wasn't freedom. It was refinement. Silk walls, polished floors, rooms filled with light that never quite felt warm. You were no longer where you came from, but you weren't anywhere you could belong either. You were placed carefully, not too high, not too low, better than servants, less than wives, close enough to power to be seen, never close enough to touch it. The doors looked decorative. They weren't. They locked from the outside. Every day began before sunrise, not because you had work, because you had to be ready, skin prepared, hair arranged, clothes selected with precision. Nothing accidental, nothing out of place. You didn't know when you would be called. That was the point. You had to exist in a state of readiness, always prepared, always perfect, always waiting. Waiting became the structure of your life. You learned quickly what mattered. Not loyalty, not skill, attention, being seen, being chosen. And when you were, everything changed. The room shifted. The air shifted. You existed for that moment, for that gaze, for that approval that could disappear as quickly as it arrived. And when it did, you felt it. Not as rejection, as absence. There was no explanation, no warning, just silence. Days passed, then weeks. You were still there, still dressed, still prepared, but no one was looking anymore. That's when you understood. You weren't kept, you were replaced. There were others, always others, younger, newer, untouched by the system that had already begun to wear you down. In the way they spoke, in the way attention moved toward them without effort. No one told you to compete. You didn't need to be told. You learned what kept you visible, what made you last one more day, one more week. You adjusted, you refined, you removed anything that might make you less desirable, even if that meant removing parts of yourself you didn't even recognize anymore. Trust disappeared first, then friendship, then anything that required honesty, because the person next to you needed the same thing you did, and there was only so much of it to go around. Favor wasn't stable, it was temporary, and everyone knew it. Food changed with it. Treatment changed with it. The way people looked at you changed with it. One day you were surrounded. The next, you were invisible. And invisibility didn't mean peace. It meant the end was coming. Not dramatic, not sudden, quiet. A room you were no longer called to. A name no one used. A presence that no longer mattered. And when that moment arrived, there was nothing left to hold on to. No position, no protection, no place to return to, because everything you had been had already been taken away long before you realized it. Inside the imperial court, the system didn't weaken. It refined itself. It grew sharper, more precise, and at the center of it, there were men who rose higher than anyone thought possible. One of them was Dongxian. He entered quietly, almost invisible, just another presence in a room filled with power. That was enough. The emperor noticed him. Everything changed. Not gradually, not carefully, instantly. Titles appeared. Wealth followed. Land, rank, authority things men spent entire lifetimes chasing were placed in his hands without resistance. His family rose with him. His name moved through the court faster than orders ever could. And for a moment, it looked different. Like the system could be escaped. Like someone chosen by it could rise above it. But that was the illusion. It always was. Because what lifted him wasn't power. It was attention. And attention doesn't last. It shifts. It fades. It moves on. The emperor's gaze became the center of everything. Decisions bent around it. Officials adjusted without being told. Authority moved without being announced. No one challenged it. No one could. Because to question him was to question the emperor himself. That was the structure. Fragile, invisible, absolute. And as long as that attention remained, nothing could touch him. But the moment it changed, everything did. Not suddenly, not violently, quietly. The court shifted before the emperor was even gone. Power always prepares for absence. Positions moved. Loyalties disappeared. Faces that once turned toward him began to turn away. No warnings, no confrontations. Just distance, growing, unavoidable. And when the emperor finally died, the system didn't collapse. It corrected itself. Titles stripped, authority erased, protection removed. Everything that had been given was taken back in a single motion. No argument, no defense, no time to react. By the end of the day, the most powerful man in the empire was nothing, not fallen, removed. Because in this system, your rise was never yours. It belonged to the one above you. And when that ended, so did you. The system didn't end all at once. It faded, slowly, quietly. The structures that sustained it began to weaken as the empire itself started to fracture. Dynasties changed. Power shifted, but the pattern remained. It repeated across centuries, across courts, across generations, until it no longer needed to be explained. It was simply there. Then, eventually, even that began to disappear. The fall of the Qing dynasty broke more than a government. It broke the world that had allowed this system to exist for over 2,000 years. The revolution of 1911 ended the imperial structure, the one thing that had held everything in place. And when that structure collapsed, the people inside it were left exposed, not freed, exposed, because there was nothing waiting for them outside, no position, no recognition, no place to return to. The roles they had been shaped for no longer existed, and neither did the protection that had once come with them. Some tried to disappear into the population, blending into cities that didn't know them, carrying names that were never theirs to begin with. Others were forced into something else entirely, interrogated, reclassified, used again, this time by a different system that needed symbols more than it needed people. The past didn't protect them, it marked them, and once again, they were reduced to something functional, something to be used, then discarded. There were no records for most of them, no graves that could be traced, no families that would claim them. The system had already taken that long before it ended. What remained were fragments, scattered names, stories that only survived because they reached the highest levels of power. The rest vanished, not over time, not gradually, completely, because that was the final function of the system. Not just to control, not just to reshape, but to erase. And when it was gone, it left behind nothing that could prove it had ever fully existed, only silence. For over 2,000 years, this system didn't need to hide. It didn't survive because it was secret. It survived because it was accepted, repeated, normalized, built into the structure of everyday life until no one inside it could see it clearly anymore. It had rules. It had roles. It had order. It had a place for everyone except the people it consumed. They weren't remembered. They weren't recorded. They were replaced. Again and again. Until even the idea of remembering them stopped mattering. We remember the emperors. We remember the few who rose high enough to leave a trace. But the millions who passed through the system without leaving anything behind, they were erased long before history ever had the chance to forget them. And maybe that's the part that matters. Not just what happened, but how easily it continued, how ordinary it felt, how no one stopped it. Because systems like this don't collapse when they're cruel. They collapse when they stop being useful. And until that moment comes, they keep running, quietly, consistently, without resistance. This is Crown and Dagger. We don't clean up history. We show you what was left behind. If this is the first time you've heard this story, that isn't a coincidence. And if you think something like this couldn't exist now, look again. Because this didn't end. It just stopped looking the same.